There's a distinction between human right and human need. Human need concept dates back to the beginning of man himself, whereby human beings have certain needs they want to acquire or they want to enjoy. So they expect their governments to support them one way or another for them to achieve those needs. The issue with human needs approach is that in that concept, when government fails through its policies to be able to deliver in assisting you to get your need, is practically inconsequential. The people are powerless to ask government any question, since it is, to start with, an assistance, or at best, charity, or favor. If somebody does not do you favor, you can't hold him responsible, and you can't hold him accountable for the failure of your need to be met by you. That is one concept that we started with. And that concept is anchored on a theoretical foundation of the early 40s. We call it Maslow's theory of needs, whereby Maslow, can't remember whether it's a reverend or a gentleman now, Maslow propounded that theory to build a hierarchy of human need in such a way that he identified the most urgent, followed by the one that is not so urgent, and so on. He identified them like that, several. But in that identification, the first need he identified was need for food. The idea at that time was that governments needed such a hierarchy in order to know how to prioritize its resources in assisting people to meet their needs. But following the First and Second World War, some experiences came to bear on the governance system that made the United Nations to shift attention of government from the human need approach to governance to human right approach to governance. Human right is something you can lay claim to legally, such that anybody who breaches your human right, you can take him to task. You can ask him questions. You can challenge him even to a duel. And you can seek justice about it. And you can seek remedy and attain all of them if we are able to situate that factor in the context of human right. The same thing is not true of human need. So in the birth of United Nations Organization, human rights gained popularity. But the rights that were focused were rights to political rights. In a nutshell, political rights were emphasized because those were the rights that government of the day were violating to dehumanize human beings more. And that time, largely nations could feel themselves. So initially, they did not prioritize right to food. But not long, within years, a couple of years, the right to socio-economic facilities also came into human beings, human life, whereby the United Nations put in place the Convention on social and cultural and economic rights of the people. There's a special convention on that. And it was that convention that now identified human rights as being even more important than so many other rights that they had prioritized, especially because the world was changing. So what they did was then to give mandate for the promotion of human right to food. They gave that mandate to Food and Agriculture Organization of the United Nations, based in Rome. And that organization had been spreading the gospel of human right to food here and there. Nigeria is a signatory to the Convention on Socioeconomic Rights generally, and subsequent conventions and protocols of United Nations for entrenching rights to food in the governance system of its member states. Therefore, it is worth adopting by any country to undertake right-based policies, including policies for achieving food security. So when in my own research process as a policy analyst, I was able to discern that the major problem of policy failure, particularly failure during implementation, the major cause is rooted in the ability of the people to participate in the policy process itself and to be able to effectively at least participate beyond tokenism, and to be able to ask government questions, to be able to demand remedies when government policies fail. I saw that, and therefore we in my organization, we try to package a system whereby that gap will be filled. And we know that for that gap to be filled, we must empower the people to be able to participate to that extent. And we realize that what is needed is a law in place that government will fear, government will countenance, and government will use as guide for meeting people's needs better. And that was informed us to seek such a law in the National Assembly. And immediately we realized that the law we are seeking cannot just be ordinary law, because issues of rights are issues inside the Constitution. If there is a right government says is granting and it's not traceable to the Constitution, it's useless right. It is not justiciable. It is not remediable. It's not even actionable by the people. So this is the relationship that brought food security into human rights regime of governance all over the world.
Okay, sir. Now you pursued the bill.
Yeah.
There's one thing to make these policies
Mm-hmm.
and laws,
Mm-hmm.
and another thing for these laws to be actually implemented.
Correct.
Especially to really allow people to get away or to be aware of these laws.
Yeah.
So that they will always seek their rights.
Mm-hmm.
What are those mechanisms and the measures that are put in place to ensure that this trickles down to the layman knowledge to be aware of these laws and then fight for their rights?
Thank you. I am not a lawyer. In the context of laws, the role of government is, one, of duty bearers. In the context of any law, like the right to food law, the obligation of government is as a duty bearer, duty bearing. That is, government has the duty once it becomes government to get that law implemented. If it does not, it's consequential upon government. And that is why we have the legislature that can question government anytime he leaves a law unattended to. Or unfortunately, though, the legislature itself gets compromised and they can look away when government is flouting or breaching a law. But generally, government is the duty bearer for a law to be implemented. The role of the people, including us on this side, bringing a law about, that will enable us to put mechanism in place to ensure implementation, which is of concern to you, is the role of right holders. We are the owner, people are the owners of that right. Right holders. Government duty bearers. So, right holders, he holds that right with an enablement, implicit enablement to be able to hold it firmly and to be in custody of that law to the extent that anybody who breaches it is challenged. So that is the role of right holders. Now, with specific respect to Right to Food Act, what mechanisms are we putting in place? The first thing we did, immediately President signed it into law, was to contact government, to notify government that government, this law has been passed by legislator and is a constitutional law. Begin implementation. We have the right to demand that because any law, government has a duty, he owes it, a duty, a strong obligation, not mere charity. He's not doing the people a favor by implementing a law. He is doing itself a favor. Otherwise, it's consequential upon government. So we contacted government and they jubilated about it, and then advised them about the way to go in getting the law off the ground. That was the first practical step, mechanism I did. And a set of bullet points of up to 4 or 5 we put before them. To get it off the ground for implementation, do the following. First of all, the issue of publicity. Law that is not known by the people is detrimental to the interests of the people. Because when the people flout that law, they cannot come back to say, no, we didn't know. Ignorance is no excuse in law. Ignorance of the facts, yes, but ignorance of the law, no. No court will listen to you. So we said, so as not to jeopardize the interests of the people in this law, please publicize it. That was one recommendation I made. Following the recommendation I made was that government should now put together a scheme that will produce implementation framework for this act, including implementing regulations. It is in that process that both the people and government will come to the same page about specifics of this law. What they will ask us, who promoted it, what do you have in mind? We say, okay, this is what we have in mind, and it is in the books of the National Assembly what we have in mind. So you cannot implement it in your own ways unless your ways are complementing the ways of the people behind the law, which is recognized in the National Assembly already. So we said they should put a mechanism in place, convene a big conference over it, where all shades of stakeholders will be there, farmers will be there, the ordinary people will be there, and so on. And we will present to them the nitty-gritties of implementing the law so that people will contribute to it, and so on. Because it's in that process that you will find out where the law will affect you and where it will affect other people. So everybody will harmonize his views and put it in an implementation framework, which is more or less a plan of action. And part of that is to now produce what we call implementing regulations. That is why if you go to see that law now as I'm talking, what you will find there may be scanty to you. You will not find the details. The details is coming in that framework and in the implementation regulations, because such regulations are actually part of the law. Do you understand? And that is why when you see a law like this, they will say, they call this particular law Act 5th Alteration, number 34 of 2023, which reads in a long title, an act to ensure that government directs its policies towards ensuring right to food and food security in Nigeria. That's the long title. Apart from long title, we went further to now highlight briefly. They permitted us to do that because Constitution is not a big thing. So we did some highlights. But in the context of those highlights are embedded the operating procedures, which is what we achieve in the implementing regulations. And they say, and allied matters to ensure food security and right to food in Nigeria, and allied matters. So those matters are the matters we are to bring up at the implementation stages, such that once we approve of it, government will gazette it as part of the law and implementation commences. So that's the mechanism. That's the how far we can go.
Final thoughts on maybe summarizing the human rights as it relates to that freedom. Final.
Generally, I have come in my policy research process to believe more in right-based governance rather than need-based governance. You will see that in what I've said so far. Now, with respect to food sector, I enjoin the government at federal, state, and local levels to please embrace this act as the most important act that came out of the last regime, and therefore most important act to the life of the people in their respective domains. And that is another reason why we didn't make it a federal law only. It's a constitutional law because after federal National Assembly passed it, it went to the 36 states because they are part of the Constitution for them to also pass it. So in March 2022, it was passed at National Assembly. And we again traveled to all the states to advocate it and so on. And one by one, they were passing it. What the Constitution says is that once we get 2/3 of the states to pass it, the country is good to go. The president is ready to sign. So from March to December, 27 states had signed it. And subsequently, we learned that other states had also signed it. But when it reached that 27 states, we prompted the National Assembly to please move faster. We didn't want the type of delay of 13 years before to be, and once president goes away and he did not sign it, they will ask us to go and begin again. So in the process, they quickly sent it to president. By that time, they have tabled 36 states to have passed the bill in that December. I don't know, 36 bills of constitutional amendment nature to have been passed in the states as at that December. So they compiled all of them and took. Meanwhile, it was about 65 they took to the states. State did not pass the rest, at least as yet. The 36 that were passed came back to National Assembly as passed. And National Assembly now packaged them to president because 2/3 that we are looking for is only 24. We have seen more. And president was kind to endorse. That's how we got there. And we were really grateful to the former president that did that and the present president that is moving in tandem with the provisions of that act. We have also made ourselves available to government to support, to assist in the implementation of this bill so that they get the logic behind it and they will not be dissipating energy away from the goal we have set for the bill.